Hi folks, this is Jeff Zoll. I want to follow up on School City for one of our middle schools where some teachers had some really good questions about some confusion that kids had when they were looking at their answers on School City assessments. And this is due to the randomization feature of the test. So I'm going to take a test right now, just go through real quick, one that we made up. Please ignore the name up there, I'm just using a student's account. And the first question says, select all the tables that represent a proportional relationship. I'm going to choose A and B, and I'm going to click Next. Question number 2 about Allie plotting the growth of her plant on a graph. I'm going to choose question C, or answer C, for my answer. Question number 3, if x equals 2 and y equals 1. For this, I think I'm going to go with B, and then click Next. And then question 4 about my friend Sarah. Sarah claims that the number of pages she has read in her book. Which of the following actions could she take? I think she could take, say D, as in dog. And click Next. And then finally, number 5, evaluate the expression. And they've given the expression there. I think that's got to be A, 34 over 3. And click Next. And finally, number 6, the engineering program at the college. That's got to be 320, C. And click Next. Now, here's my review summary. I chose, for question number 1, A and B. For question number 2, I chose C. Question number 3, B. 4D, 5A, and 6, C. So I look at that, reviewed my answers to make sure I've answered them all, and I'm going to click, just like your kids did, Done. And I'm going to submit now, just like your students did when they took the school city assessments, or our DCAs, submit. And when I do that, you note that I get what would have been my real grade had I even tried to answer these correctly. I would have gotten about 16.67% of them correct. So there were 6 questions. I got 0 correct, 2 partially correct, and 4 incorrect, it says. And now I'm going to go to the scores up here. And I'm going to go to View Result. Okay, folks, so now let me kind of review my 6 answers with what we see as the answer sheet here, and I'll show you how randomization feature is a good thing. It helps us so the kids have different tests, but now the answers are all different once we look at it here. For example, the very first thing to note when I review these answers here, it says question number 1, and guess what? This isn't what number 1 was when I took the test. It was actually the 5th question I took. So does this make sense? What I'm now saying is question number 1 was the 5th question I took when I took the test. Now what did I answer when I took question number 5? For a minute, I'm going to ignore this. I'll come back to that because I wrote down my answers just to try it out, and my answer that I wrote down was 34 over 3, which happens to be A, so my answer choice was A. That happens to align this time, but you'll see in some other questions even that will be different, but the answer will always be accurate, if that makes sense. You'll see in a minute. But in this case, it just so happens that my real answer, A, was 34 over 3, and it shows up as A here. Now, the correct answer was, of course, D, so I got that wrong. I'm a big fat 0. Number 2 on this sheet says if x equals 2. Now on my test that I made up, that was actually question 3. So again, because of randomization, we have a 2 here when it was really the 3rd question I took. Now my answer I picked, because I wrote this down, was 18. Right here, 18. And right now, the letter next to 18 is the letter D, as in Jeff is a big dummy. Now, over here, you'll see that, again, it lined up and I have my choice was D. The correct answer was A, and so we're good to go. Oh, hang on 1 second. I made one mistake here. I'm so sorry. So the answer I chose was 18. But what I meant to say, when I picked 18 on my test, and you could go back and watch the film, it was actually a B, the letter B, to the left of that number. Now it shows up, and this is why some students thought the school city company messed them up, because it says D here. That's just random. It's completely random, as the name suggests. I had picked B as in boy, but my answer was 18. So here it shows D, but regardless, I got it incorrect. The correct answer now is A. Forget the letter for a minute. The correct answer was 8, and I should have picked whatever 8 was. Number 3 now was actually the first question. You may remember that one when I took it, because it had, check all that apply, I think. Oh, no. Yes. And I had picked, when I took this, I had picked A and B. Now, A and B were the answers I had chosen, but let me show you my actual answers by the tables here. So A was actually this one here, which is now C, and B that I chose also was this one here, which is now D. But those are the two that I selected as my answers. You'll see there's C and D now, but when I took the test, they were A and B. Regardless, I was guessing, so I got one of these right and one wrong. But you have to ignore that this says C and D. I didn't pick C and D when I took the test. I picked A and B, but it does align now with that randomized, mixed up letters. All right, number 4. Now, again, because of randomization, this randomly was the same as number 4 on the test. So this actually is the same. 4 and 4 stayed the same. What did I pick when I took the test? I just picked one answer. I picked the letter D, which just so happens to align, in this case, with the right words here, plot the coordinate. So I picked D, it's still D, the answer is D, but the right answers were A and D. Let's go to the next one, just 2 more to go here. Number 5 was about Allie, and when I took this test for real, it was item number 2. And when I took it, I just randomly guessed C, but not this C. I guessed 15.5 inches because I wrote down the letter and the answer that I picked. And when I took the test, this was C, and that was my answer. So now it says that I chose B, which technically is incorrect, but technically is correct because 15.5 is indeed what I chose. And so therefore I got it wrong, and it should have been C. Now, finally, one last one. 6, again, due to randomization, magically, that was 6 on the test itself, you may remember. My answer, I chose 320. When I chose that, it was actually letter C on the test. Now it shows up as D here on this once I've scrambled them up. So it says D. I picked C when I took it. The actual answer is C, but forget the letters for a minute. The actual answer is 45. That's the answer. I picked 320. But look, if I'm a kid who took this and I didn't understand this. I said, wait a minute, Mrs. Leroux or Mr. Humphreys. I picked C. I wrote it down. I picked C. It says the correct answer is C. And now it's telling me I picked D. So please explain that to your kids Monday morning during class if possible. Ignore that and go to their answer, which there are no mistakes in School City. We've checked them all, and I've just done one here as an example. Dr. Zoll picked 320. He was not even close. It's wrong. The answer was 45. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense? Let me know if it does or not, but please explain to your kids. I apologize for that confusion because they were right to be confused by that, but you must let them know that the answers they scored were scored correctly. Now, this is just addressing the randomization feature. As we know, we had 2 legitimate problems during the test. The 15 or 20 minutes in the entire week that it went down, and although I'm not super happy with that, I'm not too surprised that we'd lose 15 or 20 minutes. That always seems to happen when we're testing with MAP or whatever. And then the other problem, of course, we found a few questions that the ruler didn't show up or the addition sign didn't show up. Even though it was on the hard copy of the test, it didn't show up on the electronic version of the test. Now, I haven't seen any of those since I've been playing around, but I know for a fact that did happen on some. But I do hope that this screencast clears up the most important question we've had, the way that it was so confusing with the answers. Thanks so much, and please email me, call me, or Amy or Marcy if you have any questions at all. Thank you.